Kingdom identity, kingdom culture, kingdom blessing. Whether you realize it or not, you were born to establish God's kingdom. Hello and welcome to the Kingdom Network. I am Abraham John. It's time to discover the lost kingdom. Have you ever wondered who you are? The answer to this question about identity will determine the outcome and the outlook of your life. In Jeremiah 1 verse 5, it is written, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained to you a prophet to the nations." For many years, my guest today did not know who he was in God's kingdom, nor of the Father's love for him. Today, he identifies as a son of God, a father, a spiritual leader, and a mentor. Darren Moyer, welcome to the Kingdom Network.
Thank you, Abraham. It's
So
an
glad
honor
to have you here.
Yes.
It's so exciting because what God is doing in your life for His kingdom, and since we met and what God has been doing, it is so amazing. I know as a little boy, you went through a lot, much loss, abandonment, sexual abuse, then the deaths of your mom and your grandmother by suicide, and then adoption. What was this like? Did you have misconception about your identity growing up?
Yes, absolutely. I was only 6 years old, and I had lost everything. My mother, my grandmother, my father, my innocence, and I didn't know what to make of it. I was so young, my perception of life was that anybody that I loved, anybody that I cared about would just abandon me and hurt me, and I would experience tremendous pain. And the misconception that I had at that early age was that I couldn't love anyone, because if I did, I would be hurt. And so I disconnected from love. And if God is love, I disconnected myself from experiencing that in any relationship.
Oh, wow. So the enemy has been busy before you were born to distract you and to deviate you from your purpose. But God reached out, because His love is never too far, or you can never go too far from His love.
Yes.
And He reached out to you. As you mentioned, there were several people that you trusted, but you couldn't receive love from. You felt betrayed, even though several men in your life. How did that lack of a godly father figure set you on a path of destruction as a 14-year-old teenage boy?
Yes. At an early age, I never felt good enough. I never felt accepted. Even after I lost my entire family and was adopted, the man of the house told me that he never wanted a son and he didn't want a boy in his house. Wow. And so here I am, 6 years old. I have lost everything that I have loved, and looking for any kind of acceptance and being rejected again. And that led to extremely destructive behavior and a lot of chaos and hurting myself in addition to other people.
So how was it then, the teenage life, when you came into the teenage years? What did you do? How was life like?
Yes, I ran away when I was 14,
my.
And I started living on the streets. And I got caught up in a criminal lifestyle. I was doing drugs and stealing things at a very high level, moving semis and working with warehouses full of stolen goods and shipping them across the country. And it was very chaotic time in my life.
What was the concept of God at that time? Or did you have a concept of God in you, in your heart, in your spirit? What was it like?
My adopted family was part of the church, and I had been going to church and had heard about God being taught, but I felt like our life was heaven in church, and hell at home. I experienced a lot of abuse, and there just wasn't a connection there. And so I looked at it as it wasn't real, because these people are saying that here's this God of love. I have not experienced that in my life whatsoever.
So God, who is invisible, His love, we supposed to experience that through people, His
Yes.
love, but many of us don't get that while we are growing up or from our family.
Yes.
And I don't think this is a strange story that you're sharing, but many people who are watching out there, they might have grown up in a similar situation. They
Yes.
might have heard God is love, but how do I experience it? So God puts people in our life, and in your case, the people that put in your life were all negative influence, right?
Yes. Yes, for the most part. There were people that loved me. My adopted mother, she was the reason that we lived with them. My grandparents were extremely loving. And however, my trust had been so fragmented. I couldn't receive love that was being given to me because I was so afraid of the pain that I had already experienced. And so even if people were trying to love me in those times, which they certainly did all the way through my upbringing, I couldn't receive it.
Because we all receive the concept of God from our family first. It's supposed to be through our parents. But in your case, you never had that experience, so you had no concept of God, so you just thought like this life is an adventure. Let's go and experience the best and the worst. And you said you got involved with all kinds of stuff. So what was the turning point from all this when you were a teenager? What happened? You cried out, Lord, oh God, if there is a God, help me.
Yes.
What happened?
Yes, so my teenage years were extremely destructive, got caught into the criminal system, and got married when I was 19. I had brain surgery shortly after that. I got a divorce by the time I was 24, and my mid-20s were very dark. A lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and I actually tried to kill myself by hanging myself in my grandparents' basement because there was no purpose, there was no meaning in my life. And what I had experienced up until that point, I just wanted out. I was done.
Wow. So the number one problem was you struggled with identity, who you were or who you are. What was your concept about identity while you were going through that struggle?
I had no idea who I was or why I was here. And it was the birth of my son, David, and holding him in the hospital and probably being at the lowest place in my life and thinking, how could I ever take care of this little boy when I can't even take care of myself? But in that moment, Abraham, I made David a promise. And I said, I will give you something that I never had. I will be a good dad, and I will be there for you. And that was my purpose.
So you were promising somebody to give something you never experienced yourself. That is a big challenge, a big step that you took. And I'm glad because you don't want your son to experience what you experienced, right?
Absolutely not.
And how did you receive that courage to say such thing to your son? Because you didn't know what it is, mean to be a father, how to be a father. That must be God working through you even without knowing it was God, right?
Yes. I didn't believe in God. I was an atheist at that time. However, I experienced something that I had never experienced before, and that's the love of a father for his child. And I looked at David, and it was just this flood of this emotion and this feeling that you have kids. you understand what I'm saying. I think everybody that has kids understands that love when you're holding your child in your arms after they're born.
Wow. How old is David now?
He is 6 years old.
He is 6 years old. And you were what age when you?
28.
28.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Such an young man. And David, I have met him and he's growing. He's a smart boy, he is very keen and attentive and eager to learn. Because I have met him with you a few times. And what would you say to a teenager? Because the number one crisis of our time is identity crisis. Many people taking their life because they just think life is just random. There's no reason, there's no purpose. And what would you say to a teenager who is struggling with their identity right now?
Yes, it's an epidemic right now. I get messages probably once a week about teenagers or young people taking their own lives. And this is happening in our backyard. And I think it's exactly that. They don't know their identity. They don't know their purpose. They have a lot of people telling them who they should be and trying to fit them into the world's mold. But a lot of them too don't have deep relationships. They don't have community. They don't have people that are encouraging them or loving them and appreciating them, showing them recognition. All of these pieces. And I think that's essentially important for teenagers. Number one is to know who Jesus is and to be in relationship with him first and foremost, but to find other people to be in community that share the same belief in looking for that truth.
We meet sometime for coffee and talk about life and kind of a mentoring relationship. How did the books from the Kingdom Network help you to discover your kingdom identity?
Yes, I mean, when I met you,
And
Abraham,
the
I had no idea what the kingdom was. I was taught in church that it's somewhere we go after this life, and you just unpacked it and gave me this whole nother perspective in Revelation that totally shifted the way that I view the kingdom and my purpose in the kingdom.
So would you mind praying for our viewers now, for them to discover that identity in God's kingdom?
Yes.
Will you please?
Father, I just proclaim your name. God, would you just meet everyone that is watching this TV show right now?
Yes.
Would you just wrap them in your arms of love, God, that they could feel that your presence is present in their life and they are not alone. And we just command any darkness, any depression, any anxiety, any thoughts of suicide, God, that you would release those strongholds of the enemy, that you would reveal to them your purpose and your calling in their life. We pray this in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you so much. We have a wonderful gift for you, blessing the 4 stages of life. If you are struggling with your identity, maybe your life has been a struggle, you're working hard, went to school, can't find a job, and some people, they just get blessed one after another. What is the reason? Because it's so important to understand the blessing, the 4 stages of life. And this book is a small booklet, absolutely free. All you have to do is to call the number on the screen or send us an email that you'll see on the screen, and we will mail you this book absolutely free. Blessing the 4 stages of life, releasing destinies to change the world. What God did for Darren, He can do for you. Doesn't matter what stage your life is in, where or which pit you fell into, God can come and rescue you and give you a new beginning and a fresh start. So please pick up the phone and call the number, and we will rush this book to you because you need this. Blessing I was not blessed, like you heard the story, so you need to read this book and find the secret of the kingdom. So thank you so much for watching today. When we are transformed from our natural way of thinking to the kingdom way of thinking, we begin to discover our identities. Remember that God knew you before you were born and has a kingdom plan for you. Don't forget to tune in next show. It's going to be wonderful because God's kingdom and He has a plan for you. Until next time, I'm Abraham John.